I've been slowly fixing the sound in my LS430 for a couple of years now. First, the subwoofer was replaced, and you can watch my video on that. A couple of months ago, my front door speakers were just sounding really distorted, so I replaced those with some OEM parts, and those were about $350 for the pair. So once I replaced those, it sounded better, but then I noticed my rear speakers were sounding awful. And I thought, instead of spending $300, $350 on a pair of OEM speakers, I'd like to see if I could replace them with some aftermarket ones. And that's what we're going to do today. You can get the foam repair kits you look on the internet and the forums, you can find those for $20, $50, whatever. I would rather, while I'm doing all this work, just replace the whole unit. And if I could do it affordably and they'll sound good, then more power to me. So as you can see, this is my rear driver side door speaker, and it looked a bit, the foam just started disintegrating as soon as I took it out. We're going to replace it, both doors actually, with this speaker here. It's an exact match down to the size and resistance, 8 ohms. This is thanks to the guys in the Lexus forums to recommending these. PRV audio 6MB 250-NDY. Great handling, the right size, and 8 ohms according to the back of this guy. So this video is going to go through removing the door card and swapping these bad boys out, and it should be pretty straightforward. The first step to removing your rear door card is to pry off this protective piece behind the door handle. Here's what the back of it looks like in case you want to see where it's holding on. It's got 2 clips on the top, bottom, one on the kind of front side of it. So pry that off with your standard interior plastic crowbar, and then remove that one screw that's kind of right in the back there that looks like this. And then we'll go on to the window switch ashtray module. The window switch ashtray assembly is kind of tricky, so you pry it up with a similar interior removal pry bar like this. And there are 2 connections on it. One of them for the switch, and obviously one of them for the God. Of course you need an accent light in the middle of your ashtray. But it actually has a screw that holds in the connection for it. So you need a small Phillips screwdriver to remove this screw, and I just put it back in here temporarily so I wouldn't lose it. To disconnect the black connection, and the white connection is just pinch and pull. And then you've got this assembly removed, and we can go on to the next ones. All right, once you remove the button assembly, there's a screw just like this that comes out right there, Phillips. There's also another one of these that holds the door card on right under the pull handle. So remove these 2 and then go to the next step. The last 3 screws to remove on the door card look like that, Phillips. And they're along the bottom underneath this rubber flashing. So I took that one out there, took one out there, and I took one out there. So remove that, and then the door card will come right off. Once all the fasteners are removed, you lift the door card off, just like the front and every other door card you probably removed. Lift from the bottom, there are a few snaps, and then it kind of hooks on to the top of the door frame up here. The toughest part is popping it out from under this pillar. So just be careful, kind of shift it left and right, but eventually it'll come off. And then getting it on is kind of just as tough, but you'll see how everything lines up once you remove it. So my door card is off. Typical connections you'd see from the door to the card, as far as handles, locking, electronics, etc. There's the door handle lock actuator. These are for this is actually the speaker harness control, and there's something down there for the Windows control, etc. One of those is for the upper tweeter here. All you really have to do in this case is way at the bottom. You can kind of see I've got it disconnected. There's a harness for the vanity light that goes in kind of like the map compartment down here, or the entry light right there. So once you disconnect that, you can then just kind of somehow prop the door card up a little bit without disconnecting everything, so you can work on the speaker hole there. Sorry for the lack of light. But that, you don't have to basically, in short, you don't have to disconnect and remove the entire card, although you can. In my case, I just connected this bottom wiring harness here to this light, so I have enough room to get in there and remove the speaker assembly. Don't get confused, this is my rear right door, not the left, for this section of the video. But I got the right rear door card kind of disconnected and removed. And you can kind of see the speaker in there, and it's held in with 3 screws. They look just like this. So remove 3 of those and disconnect the wiring harness. It's kind of like on the top right of it up here. And then the speaker will come out. So here's the door speaker assembly fully removed. Now at first glance, the element looks fine, but as soon as I removed it, while I was removing it, I touched this foam and it just started disintegrating. And I just push in on it and it just keeps falling apart. Again, there are repair kits for this, but if I can get replacement speaker elements, which I did for $130 for a pair, as opposed to taking the time to do the foam repair, I think this is worth the extra money to just replace the whole element. So that's what we're going to do. Once you have the element out, the next step is to remove the top of this mounting bracket assembly. So kind of poke through the foam here, and you'll need a Torx 15. It might be a Torx 16 or 17 or 18, but a 15 fits perfectly through here, and remove the 4 screws, keeping the top of the mounting bracket. Once you have those 4 Torx 15 screws removed, the top of this bracket just comes right off, and probably will bring with it some of the speaker foam. Again, I don't care, I'm replacing the whole element here. We want to turn it over and disconnect the element wiring harness from the bracket. So that's a pinch and pull. And then we should be able to, now the speaker is held to the bracket. There's a sticky rubber gasket between the element basket and the actual mounting bracket. So I'm going to use 2 hands to do this, but what you're basically doing is slowly lifting the speaker off the mounting bracket, and be careful, just do your best to keep the rubbery, sticky gasket in place. It might come up with the speaker. Try not to tear it or stretch it too much, but what we want to do is, once we remove the speaker, make sure that rubber gasket is back in its place to hold the replacement speaker in. So let me do that really quick. I ended up needing to use a flathead screwdriver pry bar to get some leverage to actually separate the speaker from the bracket. But you can kind of see in here that that rubber gasket. So don't, like I said, try not to stretch it too much so it stays in place and is easy to replace. Just using 2 hands or some tools, just kind of remove it, pry it away or pull it away from the speaker without stretching it too much so it stays in place, and we'll get on with the next step. The speaker is now removed, and we've got this rubber ring kind of held in place. So fortunately it didn't stretch too much, and it doesn't have to be like a watertight seal. It is meant to seal it and keep it in place and reduce vibrations. I'm sure there's a bunch of other reasons. If you break it, it's okay, but get it back into this rim around the bracket, and then we're on to the next step, which is removing the wiring harness from the old element and putting on the new one. And you can cut and strip these terminals. I'm gonna be a little more creative and waste some time and effort here and actually desolder these connections so I don't have to cut and strip the wires. Soldering iron, desoldering pump, do the thing, or like I said, cut and restrip them. And then they just, on this new speaker, these are just press and crimp connections. So you press it down, put the new wire in, or put the wire in, undo, and they automatically clamp in. Then we'll go on to the next step. We've got the wiring harness connected to the new speaker element. Again, pretty easy. I have it going this direction so it doesn't butt up against the wall of the mounting bracket. I tested the resistance at the terminal to make sure everything was hooked up well here at this connector, and it was 7.6 ohms, which is a little higher resistance than the old element, which measured out at 7.4 ohms, which is good. Better always to go higher resistance than lower, but given the little difference, this is perfect. So on the, now we got to get the element into the factory bracket here so I can go back in the car. This is that rubber gasket. Make sure it is perfectly around this ring here. And as you'll see, this speaker actually fits perfectly in here. I mean, it is a nice snug fit. The problem is these holes don't line up with these holes in the bracket. You'll see on the factory element, the frame of it actually butts out a bit for these holes. So what I am going to do, which I think will be good enough, but if somebody has a better way to do this, you know, please comment. I am just going to use a Dremel tool, rotary tool, and file these edges out near where they would go into these screw holes. So the Torx 15 screws will kind of clamp it in around the outside. I'm hoping that will hold it in place. So again, there's probably a better way to do this with some other adhesives, etc. But I'm hoping that between these 4 screws, this rubber gasket, that everything will be okay. So I'm going to make those modifications to the new speaker basket here and get it mounted in. Again, these are 4 Torx 15 screws that need to hold it in place. Here is the rear door speaker fully assembled. We're still testing at about 7.7 ohms at this connection, so all my connections are good. So the speaker wiring harness is connected to the new element terminals, plugged into the mounting bracket, and the new speaker fit perfectly in here. Once you massage the sides of the speaker with a Dremel, the screws kind of went perfectly in there and into the mounting bracket and viced everything in there pretty well. So the Torx 15 screws went through this the top of the mounting bracket here to hold everything back together. I don't know if this outer piece is required, but I went ahead and put it on there. There is a bit of a gap. Make sure when you're putting this back together, where is it? Right here. There's a little notch on the upper piece that needs to go into the female notch of the lower piece, or else it won't match correctly. As you can tell, there's a bit of a gap here of a 1/4 inch or so. Hopefully that doesn't interfere with the door card, but if it does, I'll just leave this top part off. But otherwise we're done. Now we just put it back in the door, connect it to the door wiring harness, and put everything back together in reverse order as we took it apart. So got, again, great pair of replacement speakers for about $130 shipped, saving me about $200 from the OEM Lexus Mark Levinson models. Pretty snug, good replacement. And if they sound as good as the Lexus forum guys say they do, I'll probably be kicking myself for not putting these in the front doors as well. So thanks for watching. If you have any other questions, post them in the comments and I'll try to respond to them. But there you have it.